This is a quick tutorial for section 2.5 for Algebra 2, where you're finding a line of best fit and you are using it to answer a variety of questions based on the line equation that you got. Don't lose track of what you're doing, by the way. You don't have to graph it, but I'm going to make a quick little graph right here. We're going to from 1988 and then 1992, and again I'm missing some years here, but that's okay. My x-axis, which is this top row, are the years in 2004. And if I were to plot these dots, and it looks like the lowest dot is 54, so I'm going to kind of squeeze this in, and I'd have 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61. So we're going from 54 up to 61. If I were to plot the percent of people who voted in the elections in these years, in 88, 57 people voted. In 92, 61 people voted. That was way up here. In 96, 54 people voted. In 2000, 55 people voted. And in 2004, 58. So I think that's 58, 59, yep, so 58. These dots are fairly scattered, but what your calculator will do is that if you go enter this data, the X's and the Y's is what we're used to calling them, in your calculator under L1 and L2, your calculator will run and come up with a line that best fits the data. It may not even go through any of the points. That's why they call it a line of best fit. So what that allows us to do is maybe go out and predict what will happen in the 2020 election based on this data. So what we do is we go to our calculator over here. And we have to go enter this stuff. So it's all done in your calculator. And again, you won't have to graph, okay? You just have to know how to work your calculator. I just wanted you to have a little visual there for what you're doing. So the first thing we do is we hit this stat button right here. And when you enter the data, you choose edit, which your calculator defaults to. It's the first one, so you don't need to do anything except hit stat, enter. And some lists will pop up. Now I did an example of this with the A group already this week, so this was their data. I think it was from the book assignment that some of them had. But when there's data already in there, instead of clearing them out individually or typing over them, you can use these arrow keys over here. So you can see mine turning red. Use your arrow keys so that it highlights that L1. And I'm going to repeat, it was over here. And I'm just going to use the arrow keys to move it up. And then if you hit this clear button, right there you can see it in red, and hit the down arrow, also in red, it wipes out the whole list. So I'm going to repeat that as I go over here. And I'm going to clear out list 2 by clearing it down. Then I have empty lists. So that's what you want to do when you go from one problem to the next, is clear it on down. So these values will go in L1. Okay, that's the X list. And we do 1988, enter. And you really have to make sure you type them right. 1992, enter. The next one, 1996, so we're doing the presidential elections every 4 years, 2000, enter, and then 2004. All right, those are all the years. Then we'll go up in L2, and I'm just using my arrow key, and I'll move over. I'll go enter the percent of people who voted. In 1988, 57% of the population said they voted. In 1992, it went up, went quite a bit down in 96. 2000, just a slight change. And in 2004, up a little bit more. So just over half the people are saying they voted in the elections most years. Now, what I'm going to have my calculator do is find an equation for the line of best fit. Remember, equations for lines are y equals mx plus b. But our calculators are programmed differently, and it depends on what type of calculator you have. Sometimes it'll do bx plus a. Sometimes, depending on your calculator, it'll do ax plus b. It really doesn't matter, guys. You just have to know, and you have to follow it like a map, and know that this number right here is your slope, regardless of whether they call it a or b. Whatever's in front of x goes in as the slope. Okay? Whatever isn't in front of x, be it a or b, goes in for the y-intercept. Now you just need to make your calculator calculate those. So what we do is we go back to the calculator, we go back to the stat button. I have to deactivate my highlighter here. So we go back to the stat button. Let's clear that off. And this time, instead of edit, again, edit is where you go to enter these, and I'm going to repeat. We put the top row in L1, and we put the bottom row in L2. One piece of data at a time. We go over to Calc. We go down to LinReg. And you can see my calculator is AX plus B. So my calculator, again, it depends on your calculator that you're using. My calculator is going to do this. So my A that the calculator gives me has to go in for the slope. All right, so let's go see. All I do is hit enter, enter, and it's saying, do you want me to pull the x's from the first list? Yes, remember I told you these are the x's. And then y's, yes, frequency we don't need, store it, we don't need to store it, and we're just going to calculate. So you just keep hitting enter all the way on down. And your calculator, you'll notice, spits out the slope, which for us is the A, and the y-intercept, which is the b. All right, so let's go write the equation for our line of best fit. Okay, that's the first thing you'll be asked to do. Usually there's 4 or 5 questions about these. So first one, though, is almost always write an equation for the line of best fit. It'll be y equals the slope, which for mine is the a. So it'll be negative 0.1x plus b, 256.6. It's always y equals mx plus b. Now you might want to change this to percent of people who voted is negative 0.1 times the years, okay, plus 256.6. It really doesn't matter. You can go ahead and, honestly, I'd probably just leave it with what you're used to, y equals mx plus b, but understand that your y's are the percent of people who voted and your x's are the years. All right, so that's my equation. Sometimes it'll say interpret the slope in this context. Well, remember slope is change in y, so change in percent of people who voted per year. So there'd be negative 0.1% per year. So whatever you get for the slope, you write it down, and it's this per this. I know one on your book was like fat grams per calorie, but it's always y per x. Okay, so the next question that sometimes get asked is to predict what will happen in the year. Let's do this year's election. This year's 2020, and there is a presidential election coming up. Based on this model and the equation that my calculator is giving me for the line of best fit, I would do y equals negative 0.1 times the x, which is the years, right here. I'll go, boom. These are the years. I'm going to pretend we're taking that table out farther to 2020, which we don't know yet because it hasn't happened. So these are used to predict future values. Negative 0.1 times 2020 plus 256.6. And you'll just go to your calculator. I'm going to second quit here. Go back to some blank paper. So second quit. And let's erase some of that. I will just do negative 0.1 times 2020. So you always put what you're predicting it for, like what x value you're predicting it for, which in this case is years, in for the x in your equation. Plus 256.6 equals. According to my prediction, 54.6 6% of people will vote in this upcoming election. Okay, it's a prediction based on that line of best fit. Sometimes there's a question about, if you saw in my calculator that R value, let's go back. So again, it's a good review to go back to stat. Let's go back to stat, over to calc, back down to linear regression. So stat, calc, linear regression. Remember, the data goes in under the edit. So if I was going and doing another problem after this, I'd hit edit and type in new data. Once the data is in, we go stat, calc, number 4, and I'm just going to have it recalculate because I had left that screen if you remember. So again, gave me the slope, I plugged it in. Gave me the y-intercept, I plugged it in, but what is this? The closer that is to 1, the better fit the line was. So if it came out like 0.89 or 0.99 or negative 0.9, the closer it is to 1 in absolute value, the closer this line was, like if the dots had been like this, and they were really lined up in almost a perfect line, then that R value will usually say like 0.97. It'll be really close to 1, either as it is or an absolute value. The negative just means that it was going down instead of an up. So anyway, negative 0.23. What that tells us is this is not a great fit. Again, if you get 0.99, it's a really good fit, and this is probably a really good estimation. But you can see these are bouncing around quite a bit. Although if I made my graph a little better, they probably appear a little bit more in line. But that's it. That's all you do. So now if I was going to do another problem, I'd hit my stat, my edit. I would go and erase what's on there so you can see it. I'd go to L1, just to repeat. I'd clear it down. I'd go up and over to L2. I'd clear it down, and I'd start entering my new data. Now, those of you who had a Delta Math assignment, sometimes it said predict what year. The percent would be maybe 60. Well, then you go back into your equation, and you'd have to put the 60 in for the y value. So the first thing you should really do when you're doing these is go X, Y, L1, L2, just so you know exactly what you're working with on your calculator. So that's it for section 2.5 if you needed a little help. Good luck on that test tomorrow, and I would definitely, or Thursday, I would definitely make use of those test prep videos.